Hello, fellow project managers. I hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to be taking a look at agile questions. I know your exam is coming up and you might want to test your firepower to see agile questions and what you can do to them. We're going to take a look at some right now, so let's jump straight into it. Huge shout out to my buddy Mark, who wrote a lot of these questions I'm going to be showing you today. So let's get started. Here's your first question. I'll give you roughly a minute to answer. I request that you spend a minute pondering on the answer and then selecting in a speedy fashion. If you need more time when you hear me giving a countdown, just hit the pause button, think about it before answering. Are we ready? Let's go. The team is conducting a review meeting with the product owner, and there are disagreements about whether the deliverables, the product increment, for the iteration are acceptable. What step was not adequately completed? I'll give you a minute. All right, let's end this. 3, 2, and 1. Now, the answer to this question may not be what you're thinking. Let's read it carefully one more time. It says, there are disagreements about whether the deliverables, the product increment, you get that? So at the end of every sprint, you get an increment, right? Hopefully a shippable increment. Now, it says, for the iteration, see that? Increment for the iteration. What step was not adequately completed? Now let's see if we can find any false statements. The Scrum Master or coach fails to adequately define acceptance criteria in the scope statement. Well, we don't use scope statements, and that wouldn't be one person's responsibility. So we're going to cancel that. Let's go to the next one. Retrospective meetings were not held. Retrospective meetings are not where we do the majority of what is needed to define if a product increment is acceptable or not. So let's get rid of that. The retrospective is used as a quality check for teams to find ways to improve the team, find ways that the team could do things better. Similar to a lessons learned, but better in that the information shared in the retrospective is held close to the vest and it's not broadcast to the entire universe. C, the product owner fails to adequately define acceptance criteria. So two things are wrong here. One, the product owner is being blamed for acceptance criteria. But beyond that, because the product owner should be involved, but we shouldn't let the product owner take the fall for acceptance criteria. But secondly, what is being described, is it really acceptance criteria? Product increment for the iteration. You know that acceptance criteria is used more for stories. Do you remember that? That acceptance criteria is more for stories. At the back of the card, you know, we talk about the 3 C's and all that stuff. And then we talk about the front of the card having the story and the back of the card having the criteria, acceptance criteria. And some of the formats that we use are like the Gherkin format. Remember? Well, in this case, my friends, this is not talking about that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to strike out not just A, not just B, but also C, because this is not talking about accepting a user story. This is talking about accepting an entire product increment. And that fits more to a different definition. Let's see what we have in D. The definition of done was not properly addressed by the customer or product owner and the team in the iteration planning meeting. That is a more befitting explanation because we're talking about the DOD, the definition of done. All right, so that's your first question. Look out for the differences between definition of done and acceptance criteria. It's a rather technical question, but it makes you think deep. It's a very good one. Good job, Mark. Let's go to our next one. As the team starts creating product increment during an iteration, they discover the initial estimates for the stories were significantly off. Some estimates exaggerated the amount of work and time needed. Some understated the amount of work and time that would be needed. At the next retrospective, what would be the best advice for resolving this problem in the future? I'll give you a minute to think about it. All right, 3, 2, and 1. I did give you ample time for this one because I know some folks would need to read in between the lines to get the answer. So It says, at the next retrospective, what would be the best advice for resolving this problem? Some estimates exaggerating the amounts of work. So let's talk about what we do with our estimates. These estimates of stories help us compute the velocity. And the velocity does fluctuate over the first few sprints quite tremendously on some projects. On some endeavors, the velocities are never exactly what you predicted them to be. So just keep that in mind. So what would be the best advice? Let's see. A, use planning poker to obtain the estimates. However, the estimates were obtained, they're off. Planning poker doesn't automatically adjust your estimates to be correct. Garbage in, garbage out. It could help because, we call it wideband Delphi. So it does help to some degree if done well, but it's not always a given. So we need to keep A at bay, which we will. Doesn't sound entirely right. Let's take a look at B. B says, this is not a problem that needs to be fixed. With Agile, there's a high level of uncertainty at the beginning of the project, and it is expected the initial estimates will not have a high level of precision or accuracy. So what is precision? The estimates being clustered if you were to plot them out, right? Or the estimates over each sprint being like 250, 250, 250, or 250, 249. But you could also have some instances where you have the estimates so far off from what they should have been, but they are precise. Like they could all be 150, 150, 150, but you said they were going to be 250. Now that's a case where we have precision, but no accuracy. Accuracy would be closer to the actual number that we desire, 250. So B is correct in some respects. Actually, in all respects, now that we've defined precision and we've defined accuracy as being close to the target. So it's true. Estimates will not always be clustered together in repeated numbers or even close to the desired number. So B is true. Let's take a look at the others. C, ensure estimates are obtained from developers and specialists who are very experienced in doing this type of work. Well, it says the team, that's all we need, right? The team starts creating the product increment. The team is the team, because everyone is different. You need to use the exact team that's doing the work for those estimates. So obtaining them from developers and specialists who are very experienced is not a very good solution. That will give you estimates that are peculiar to them. We use empirical data that's real and realistic and based on empiricism, like real stuff, real people doing the exact work, real occurrences, that same project. So we'll cancel C. D, use bottom-up. Definitely not. Wherever possible, not on an Agile project. Definitely not in an Agile project. This will provide the best and most accurate estimates. So bottom-up is good, but just judging from the language, you see, it said in the next retrospective. So you're in Agile, so it can't be that. All right, so if you suspected the answer was, this is not a problem that needs to be fixed, you're very correct. That is the correct answer. All right, here's your next one. Your team is doing a retrospective meeting and looking for factors that indicate processes could be improved. Which of the following is an indicator that a process could be improved? Again, look for the clues. I'll give you a minute. Alrighty then, 3, 2, and 1. Your team is doing a retrospective meeting and looking for factors that indicate processes could be improved. Which of the following is an indicator that a process can be improved in the world of Agile? So, A, look for processes that are used heavily on projects with a sequential or waterfall lifecycle. Now, let's talk about the Stacy model for a quick second, because the Stacy model shows you could have processes that are used a lot. Used heavily means used a lot on projects with a sequential or waterfall lifecycle. So ask the question, is there something wrong with that? Processes that are used a lot, right? There's nothing wrong with processes used a lot on sequential projects. And then the next one says, look for heavy, embellished, and once used processes. In other words, you're getting low value from them because they've been used only once. And when we say heavy, we're talking about a lot of steps, a lot of process intricacies, So when we say something is lightweight, that's how we describe Agile. When we say something is heavy, it means it has a lot of tenuity about it. It has a lot of repeated steps or just a whole bunch of steps. And once used, points to low value. So actually B could possibly be one of them. So we know it's not A because there's nothing wrong with A. B, it does sound like we got some issues with B right there. And C says, look for processes with SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound. There's nothing wrong in that. So processes with SMART goals are good. D, look for processes that were not created internally. No, there's nothing wrong in a process that may have been created with an external vendor. So it's not D. That narrows down the problem to B. Heavy, embellished. Look at that word embellished. You don't want to do that. That is so anti-agile. And that's why the answer here is B. Look for heavy, embellished, and once used processes. Let's go on to our next one. What document will contain the initial features, cost estimates, and time estimates? Note the word initial and note those variables: initial features, cost estimates, and time estimates for the project. I'll give you a minute and a bit. Go. All righty then, 3, 2, and 1. So let's take a look at these. Note the word initial. In other words, in the very beginning. So we take a look at this. Initial is not, I guess we could say, from the world of Agile, which of these would be initial? So scope statement is not very Agile, okay? We're gonna get rid of that. Initial features, cost estimates are not contained in the scope statement, and that's why we're going to conveniently cancel that. All right. So to be quite honest, I know I told you we're talking about Agile today, but even if I didn't tell you we're talking about Agile, which of these does not contain cost estimates? The product backlog does not contain cost estimates, okay? And it says initial features. So initial features, cost estimates, and time estimates. These are not going to be found, all found in every single one of these. There's only one correct answer, okay? So the product roadmap does not contain cost estimates. It contains a roadmap with a vision and an iteration plan of sorts, high level, showing you the different time periods for releases, but it does not have cost estimate. So we're going to cancel that. And the answer is the charter. Yes. The key term is initial, right? Initial, early on, or a high level definition of requirements indicates the charter. So we've just completed the feasibility step, and now we're doing initiating. That's kind of the mindset. In initiating, when you do develop project charter, whether you are in the world of Agile or in the world of predictive, we have high-level milestones. Let me show you this just in case some of you have forgotten what the charter could contain. All right, now you might be reading this. If you're reading this, some information about the charter, some is on page 49. That page 49 has some of that. Project charter answers, include the vision, parts of the vision are extrapolated in it, project's release criteria, the intended flow, blah, 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 blah. But one thing people forget, my friends, is on this exam, you could be dunked into a hybrid kind of project, which is what this question is doing. And for that, look, I hate to tell you this, but you're still going to have to keep this close to the vest. Yes, you bought the 7th edition, but the 7th doesn't cut it enough. Does a nice job for principles, helps you get into the mindset. Yes, there's a few nuggets here and there in the second part of the book, but when it comes to hybridization, you got to understand these two. These two really give you a good sense of what, so for example, what the project charter is to combine. Taking a look at a hybrid view. So if you go to page 81, project charter, we got a project charter, key output, right? If you take a look, you would see pre-approved financial resources, yeah? Summary milestone schedule, overall project list, high-level requirements, high-level project description. That is everything that this question is asking. See what I'm saying here, my friends? Everything this question is asking. The cost estimates, the initial features, time estimates. It's pretty much saying high-level scope, high-level cost, high-level schedule. Okay, and all of that is in your project charter. Okay, let's move on. Here is your next one. You are assessing the merits of different projects from a financial perspective. Which of the following, which project selection criteria would be considered the most attractive? This is testing you on a concept I'll let you in on in a minute and a half. So in this one, we're tested on net present value. And in net present value, you might recall that the higher the net present value is, the better. So if net present value is high, accept the project. If it's low, don't go with that option. Here we can see three net present value numbers. Let's take a close look. The first number is negative. This is less than zero. For a project to be lucrative, net present value must be greater than zero. In this case, it's less than zero. So this is a non-starter. We wouldn't even look any further. You see a minus, bad. Now it gives you return on investment and payback period, but all of that is water under the bridge because it's a negative NPV. Option B, the NPV for option B and option C are identical, but the ROI is also identical. The tiebreaker is the payback period. Would you prefer to get all your initial investments in 5 years, or would you prefer to get them in 4 years? You'd prefer to get your money back in 4 years, wouldn't you? And that means the 4-year payback period is better than the 5-year payback period. So you will cancel this and you're left with C and D. The question says from a financial perspective, you see, and here's a tricky thing in a lot of these exams, PMP, ACP, it gives you some breadcrumbs and you're either going to follow the breadcrumbs, the right breadcrumbs, because you got the stale breadcrumbs and you got the good breadcrumbs. Follow the good breadcrumbs and understand. This is a breadcrumb telling you from a financial perspective, the goals mapping directly to the mission statement of the organization. That is not talking financially. So we cancel D. And the option we're left with is C. Net present value is $900,000. All right. So the questions, like I keep telling you, that were written, they're written by my buddy Mark. I am going to put a link to Mark's YouTube channel so that you take a look. He's my esteemed colleague. For those of you who are serious about going deep into project management, highly advise that you check out Mark's page. And Mark also has a book. Where have I put Mark's book now? Mark's book is in my library somewhere. He's written a book on hybrid project management. And before we end this broadcast, I will show you his book. I think I remember where it is. All right, let's go to the next question. Next question. What are the 7 wastes in agile project management? Now, this is a more advanced type of question, okay? But I want you to take a stab at it. Can you guess which option is correct? Definitely more on the ACP spectrum. PMPs in the making may never have seen this before, but take a shot at it. All right, my friends, 3, 2, and 1. The answer to this question is very specific, okay? It's specific to a body of work that has been done by different individuals, but made famous by Mary and Tom Poppendieck in their book, Lean Software Development. And in their book, Lean Software Development, they list out the 7 wastes. So let's take a look at the 7. I'm going to read them out for you. 7 wastes are as follows: partially done work, extra features, relearning, handoffs, delays, task switching, and defects. Now, I know you're looking at this and you're wondering, well, how do I know? Because what you read sounds different, Phil. Let's use process of elimination to get rid of some that are not part of the 7 wastes. This unnecessary meetings in A disqualifies it. Procrastination, even though it sounds intelligent, that is not a direct account of any of the 7 wastes. And of course, if you fell into this trap, yeah, it's trying to brainwash you using the manifesto in a wrong way. No, D, listing unnecessary documentation, that is not one of the 7 wastes. So we're left with option C: motion, defects, waiting, partially done work, task switching, extra features, and extra processes. Now, for those of you who do know about the 7 wastes and you're wondering, but Phil, there's some stuff that I was expecting to see and I didn't see. Some of the things you might have been expecting to see, apart from partially done work and extra features, you might have been looking to see relearning, right? Learning all over again. Well, even though relearning is not here, think about what happens when you're doing your task switching, when you're doing your context switching. So this task switching, you might hear people referring to that as having to relearning. Another one here is handoffs. Another word for handoffs, you could also call that a form of context switching, switching from one context to another. But you can also talk about the aspect of motion as well. See, you could also talk about delays, but delays really means a form of waiting as well. See, and then we have defects themselves. So the original 7, if you will, partially done work, extra features, which is also called overproduction, by the way, relearning, handoffs, delays, task switching, and defects. So if you take a look at this, you can say when it comes to waiting, we could say that's delays. When it comes to motion, you could say that refers to handoffs in some way. But whatever the case, we got rid of those that are not the original 7, and it boils down to option C: motion, defects, waiting, partially done work, task switching, extra features, extra processes. Okay, so the answer is C. Let's go to our next and final question for the day. Which of the following is least consistent with the Agile ethos or Agile culture? In other words, the Agile mindset. Go for it. All right, 3, 2, and 1. All right, my friends. So taking a look at this question could be a little bit challenging for some people, and I understand why it might be challenging. Everything here seems good. So let's go, first of all, to those that are clearly correct. The product owner is a voice of the customer. Absolutely. Is a mouthpiece for the customer, for sure. Okay. So that is a good one. It's not the one we're looking for because it says which of these is least consistent. Least. Let's go to option D. The team is empowered and self-directing. Absolutely. There's no arguing with that, for sure. And that leaves B and C. So let's take a look at the intricacies in C. The team is provided a wide degree freedom and trust. So freedom. Let's go to the manifesto real quick and let's read up a few things that are here in the manifesto. So let's go to agilemanifesto.org and examine it just a bit. Here we go. It says individuals and interactions of processes and tools work in software with comprehensive documentation. So we have come to value. It didn't say instead of, it says that you value these things more, right? It didn't say keep this low or keep this out of the entire process. It didn't say that. It said we have come to value. You're valuing something over another. It didn't even say we choose to do what is on the left over what is on the right. It didn't say that. It just said we value what is on the left more. Valuing something more, valuing water over food doesn't mean that you're saying keep food to a minimum. You see, there's a difference. But with that said, we can go further into the 12 principles. There are a few things in the 12 principles down here. Let's take a look. One of these talks about the power of the team pretty much. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. At regular intervals, a team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Shows you the team has quite a bit of autonomy and power and ability, right? What else? Okay, talks about the team quite heavily. So let's go back. A lot of heavy discussion about the team. Build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need. Uh-oh, there's the word. And trust them to get the job done. Okay, so point made. If we go back to our lineup here, we can see that the team does have quite a bit of latitude. But option B is a little bit questionable in that it's talking directly about specifics. So we can say these are correct and B is incorrect. It's saying documentation is not emphasized. That's controversial right off the bat. So because it says we've come to value this over this, we cannot say what is on the left is being emphasized more. Let's even say you could say that, even if you wanted to. The second statement is just flat out wrong and should be kept to a minimum. Well, what if it's a documentation project? You see, you can't use a one-size-fits-all for this. It says also focusing on processes is kept to a minimum. That's not true. In the world of Scrum, which is an agile framework, we follow a very finite process, 3, 5, 3, 3, 5, 3. We're very specific. So in this question, the one we're looking for is B. That is the wrong one, which is the right answer. Okay. All right, my friends, I hope you found this to be helpful. If you did, make sure you share it with your friends. Make sure you hit like and subscribe so you can get more information when these things are live. All right. Thank you very much. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Bye for now.